From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
My name is Rob Casper. I'm the head of the Poetry and Literature Center at the Library of Congress, and I'm one of the biggest fans of our next author, Terrance Hayes. I've known Terrance almost half my life, and like all great old friends, we have ongoing arguments. In one, Terrance says that I only see his best or his idealized self. It's easy to see the best in Terrance. For one, he is one of our finest and most celebrated young poets. His fourth poetry collection, Lighthead, won this year's National Book Award and was nominated for a National Book Critics Circle Award. He has also received a Whiting Writers Award, the Kate Tufts Discovery Award, a National Poetry Series Award, and fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, which is sponsoring this tent, and the Guggenheim Foundation. In response to the National Book Award announcement, the New York Times editor Gregory Cowles said, "Hayes' work is terrific and characteristic of a certain strain in contemporary poetry. It's grounded in narrative even as it's linguistically dense and playful, with allusions to formal verse traditions and to pop culture, new and old. There's an appealing restlessness and reach and witty musicality, with meanings that can explode in 1,000 directions in every line." I would argue Terrance's poetry is so engaging, so surprising, precisely because it refuses to idealize, to present either its speaker or its subjects in ways that its readers might find easy solace in. It's not that Terrance aims to antagonize in verse. Instead, he employs the form and its various devices to explore, and as in any real exploration, such activity courts danger. I admire Terrance as much as I do because his poems can leave me uncomfortable, unsure, yet they paradoxically give me great faith in the power of the human voice. To know Terrance well is to know he cannot help but tell the messy, difficult truth and want to think it through with you. His poems both formalize and run with this impulse. The best self of Terrance's writing is this necessary self, and in hearing him read his poems, we can both admire it in him and connect to it in ourselves. Please welcome Terrance Hayes.
All right. You worked too hard on that, man. Thank you. We're outside. You could have just been like, here he comes. Okay. How long am I supposed to read for? 3 days? 30 minutes? Let's see if we can do 30 minutes with all of this noise up here. It's good to be here. I hope you guys have gotten to hear lots of good work, lots of good poems and stories, and I hope I can contribute something to what you've heard. So how about this one? It feels like right to invoke Gwendolyn Brooks. I have this poem called The Golden Shovel. And so my son, I decided, needed to learn a poem when he was about 5. And this was the poem he had to learn, We Real Cool. And since the poem was just in the house, I eventually thought, well, I guess I need to write something about it too. So I wrote a poem in which her poem is sort of at the end of it. So if you were to look at the poem, each end line is a word from her poem. And I think everybody knows this one. We real cool, we left school, we lurk late, we strike straight, we sing sin, we thin gin, we jazz June, we die soon. Everybody knows that one. So it got me thinking about my father's exploits at the pool hall. He would take me there when I was, 6 or 7. I never learned how to play pool. I just got a lot of secondhand smoke, but he would take me there. So, and that's who her poem is for. It's for the pool players. So here's my poem. When I am so small, my father's sock covers my arm. We cruise at twilight until we find the place the real men lean, bloodshot and translucent with cool. His smile is a gold-plated incantation. as we drift by women on bar stools with nothing left in them but approachlessness. This is a school I do not know yet, but the cue sticks mean we are rubbed by light, smooth as wood, the lurk of smoke thin to song. We won't be out late. Standing in the middle of the street last night, we watched the moonlit lawns and a neighbor strike his son in the face, a shadow knocked straight. Dad promised to leave me everything, the shovel we used to bury the dog, the words he loved to sing, his rusted pistol, his squeaky Bible, his sin. The boy's sneakers were light on the road. We watched him run to us looking wounded and thin. He'd been caught lying or drinking his father's gin. He'd been defending his ma, trying to be a man. We stood in the road and my father talked about jazz, how sometimes a tune is born of outrage. By June, the boy would be locked up state. That night, we got down on our knees in my room. If I should die before I wake, Dad said to me, it would be too soon. So there's one. Can y'all hear me? Yeah? Let me see if I can read something to make y'all laugh a little bit. What do I have in here to make you laugh? Put a little pressure on myself. Well, there's a series of kind of head poems, Anchorhead, Tankhead, but sort of one of the recurring characters would be Lighthead. So this is one of the Lighthead poems. It's called Lighthead's Guide to Addiction. And if you are addicted to sleep, a bay of fresh coffee may help. If you are addicted to coffee, teach yourself to break dance. If you are addicted to dancing, polio will cure you. If you hear that the last black man alive will be burned at sunset, find an underground railroad. If you are addicted to railroads, try wearing undersized shoes. No one knows where your mother has gone with her tax refund. If you are addicted to shoes, move to a provincial village in Japan. If you are addicted to Japan, try eating with no teeth. If you are addicted to teeth, visit the wife beater's widow. She will be upstairs awaiting your caress. I often wake up horny. If you are addicted to masturbation, seek company. If you are addicted to company, try starlight and silence. If you are addicted to silence, find guard dogs, traffic, or infants. If you are addicted to infants, try reliable contraception, or try asking yourself, what's wrong with me? If you are addicted to contraception, try recklessness. Try riding an unsaddled horse until you are thrown into a bed of gravel. If you are addicted to recklessness, try a spoon-fed disease. My mother loves imagining the day she'll die. If you are addicted to disease, visit an old world doctor. If you are addicted to doctors, try war. If you are addicted to sorrow, all my talk about loss is not lost to you. No one knows why your father built a shed for his weapons, probably with some hellified form of addiction. If you are addicted to weapons, please find the people who plan to burn the last black man alive at sunset for me. Or try learning a little history. Obviously, I'm addicted to repetition, which is a form of history. If you are addicted to history, try a blindfold of razors or buy a Cadillac. If you are addicted to Cadillacs, try poverty. No one is addicted to poverty, but if you are, try wealth. If you are addicted to wealth, you'll need money. If you are addicted to money, you'll need money. Try that. There's that one. So, this is one I should read, the Avocado. So in Pittsburgh, where I live, every February they have, it's Black History Month, and everybody talks about their great Black history moments. And in Pittsburgh, there's really only kind of one. And it's from '69, I guess, when a bunch of college students took over the computer lab, which is, and they're still talking about it. So I was at an event, and one of the people who was there, I feel like every Black person that was alive then was participated in this, supposedly. So anyway, so that's sort of the scene for the poem, but there's just a moment in the poem which mentions a Harriet Tubman statue on the mall. So, I just thought about that because I was like, oh, we got Martin Luther King statue on the mall. So that's almost Harriet Tubman. Let's get a Harriet Tubman statue on the mall. Who do we write to? All right, so the Avocado. In the poem I say 1971, but that's sort of at the, the end of the civil rights heyday, I guess. In 1971, drunk on the sweet, sweet juice of revolution, a crew of us marched into the president's office with a list of demands, the Black man tells us at the February luncheon. And I'm pretending I haven't heard this one before, as I eye black tortillas on a red plate beside a big green bowl of guacamole made from the whipped, battered remains of several harmless former avocados. If abolitionists had a flag, it would no doubt feature the avocado, also known as the alligator pear for obvious reasons. Number one, reparations. Enough gold to fill each of our women's wombs, gold to nurse our warriors waiting to enter this world with bright fists. That's what we told them, the man says. And I'm thinking about the money-colored flesh of the avocado, high in monosaturates. Its oil content is second only to olives. I'm looking at my wife's caterpillar locks dangle over her ear. I dare you to find a lovelier Black woman from Cincinnati where the North touches the South. 3, we want more boulevards named for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., an airport named for Sojourner Truth. The roots of the avocado tree can raise pavements, so it's not too crazy to imagine the fruit as a symbol of revolt on the abolitionist flag. We are all one kind of abolitionist or another, no doubt. And we are like the avocado, too, with its inedible, ruby-colored seed that can actually sprout from the inside when the fruit is overmature, causing internal molds and breakdown. Demand number 21, a Harriet Tubman statue on the mall. Brother man is weeping now and walking wet tissue to the trash can, and he's saying, Harriet Tubman was a walking shadow. Or he is saying, Harriet Tubman walked in shadows. Or he is saying, to many, Harriet Tubman was a shadow to walk in. And the meaning is pureed flesh with lime juice, minced garlic, and chili powder. It is salt and the pepper Harriet Tubman tossed over her shoulder to trouble the bloodhounds. Many isolated avocado trees fail to fruit from lack of pollination. Damn, ain't you hungry? I say to my wife, and she puts a finger to my lips to distract me. Say, baby, wasn't that you waking me up last night to say you'd had a dream where I was a big, luscious, man-sized avocado? Someone's belly is growling. We weren't going to be colored. We weren't going to be Negro, the man says. And I'm thinking every time I hear this story, it's the one telling the story that's the hero. Hush now, Harriet Tubman probably said near dawn, pointing a finger black enough to be her pistol barrel toward the future, or pointing a pistol barrel black enough to be her, pointing a finger black enough to be her pistol barrel toward the future, or pointing a pistol barrel black enough to be her finger at the mouth of some starved, stammering slave, and then lifting her head to listen for something that no one but her could hear. So there we go. So, I'm just trying to come up with reasons to read certain poems. So then I thought, just that moment ago when I had that little, where was I? I just realized Marvin Gaye's from Washington, D.C. That's why I screwed up that line. So that's like multitasking in my head. So then I thought, I have actually a strange Marvin Gaye poem. So it's true, I do like telling stories, because I'm from the South originally. But I also like just to sort of let the words just fall and do what they want to do, which I guess is what singing or what lyric is. So this poem is called A Form of Sexual Healing. If I was going to give you a scene, it would just be like, being in a karaoke bar and then a drunk guy that can't sing trying to sing Marvin Gaye, trying to sing Sexual Healing, which is an awful scene if you think about it. A white dude, I should have said a drunk white dude trying to sing Sexual Healing at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, but that's sort of just floating around, but the poem sort of goes towards Marvin Gaye. So it's called A Form of Sexual Healing. Will you speak to me now, bedeviling sweet muser, old coke face up in the song bar, all karaoke'd in discord, your music lavished by a booze hound whose singing is synkless, whose outcry eradicates your ghost-written dabblings. The difference between what's going on and let's get it on is filled with a chorus of maidens in makeup chanting, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, like an echo disrobed, like a man on his back and a woman breaking against his pose. Tonight, when I heard you, whose singing was hunger, I cried for more than a moment over the forms of healing, because my crush was demised, because my joy was capsized, and the feeling made me clean as your voice on its side. Will you speak to me now, soul-musing bedeviler, from that hole out of which all the prisons of the world arise? So, essentially when the guy really started singing, I started praying to Marvin Gaye just to come, please, Marvin Gaye, put on a real song. I don't want to hear any more karaoke. So there's something like that. Let's see what else I have in here. How about, okay, so we're doing music. Here's another kind of adventure poem. It's called The House Is Not a Home. And it is sort of dealing with like just after Luther Vandross died, who would be like the last R&B singer maybe, I don't know. So A House Is Not a Home. There's other stuff going on, but. It was the night I embraced Ron's wife a bit too long because he refused to kiss me goodbye that I realized the essential nature of sound. When she slapped me across one ear and he punched me in the other, I recalled almost instantly the purr of liquor sliding along the neck of the bottle a few hours earlier as the three of us took turns imitating the croon of the recently deceased Luther Vandross. I decided then, even as my ears fattened, to seek employment at the African American Acoustic and Audiological Accident Insurance Institute, where probably there is a whole file devoted to Luther Vandross. And probably it contains the phone call he made once to ask a niece the whereabouts of his very first piano. I already know there is a difference between hearing and listening, but to get the job, I bet I'll have to learn how to transcribe church fires or how to categorize the dozen or so variations of gasping, one of which likely includes Ron and me in the 8th grade, the time a neighbor flashed her breast at us. That night at Ron's house, I believed he, his wife, and Luther loved me more than anything I could grasp. I can't believe you won't kiss me. You're the gayest man I know, I told him, just before shackling my arms around his wife. My job will be about context, I'll tell friends when they ask. I love it, though most days all I do is root through noise like a termite with a number on his back. What will I steal? Rain falling on a picket sign, breathy epithets. You think I'm bullshitting. When you have no music, everything becomes a form of music. I bet somewhere in Mississippi there's a skull that only a sharecropper's daughter can make sing. I'll steal that sound. More than anything, I want to work at the African American Acoustic and Audiological Accident Insurance Institute so that I can record the rumors and raucous rhythms of my people, our jangled history, the slander in our sugar, the ardor in our anger, a subcategory of which probably includes the sound particular to one returning to his feet after a friend has knocked him down. So I was I was reading about Franz Kafka, and he worked at the, who knows where Franz Kafka worked? It was like the Bohemian Insurance Institute of the Kingdom of Bavaria. It was something bizarre. So when I saw that, I thought, oh, I'm going to work at the AAAAAAA. I just thought it gave me the idea for the Acoustic and Audiological Accident Insurance Institute. Okay, let me see. I thought I would read a couple of new poems for y'all. Maybe just a few more from the book. Here's one. Nina Simone doesn't have anything to do with Washington, D.C., does she? She's not from Washington, D.C. Let's pretend she is. I am a bird now. This, too, would be like the Marvin Gaye poem, where it's sort of like, lyric. In fact, what's sort of woven into the song is feeling good. And at one point, I had the whole sort of first verse of that song, feeling good, at the end of the poem, but then I thought I might get sued or something. You don't know, people be suing you for copyright infringement, so I took it off. So I'll hum it or something so you guys know the song. But I Am a Bird Now is the name of the record by this guy, Anthony, of Anthony and the Johnsons. Anybody knows Anthony and the Johnsons? He's sort of a cross-dressing, strange-looking, heavy-set white guy who sings like Nina Simone. Or he wants to be. He's channeling Nina Simone. So, he does that's how he sings. No. Something like that. But it's good. It's good music. So, anyway, I Am a Bird Now. When Anthony, a man like Nina, with a shook note cornered in his quiver, dolls a wig of light the way a wounded head is dolled, the song slung from his grimace is no longer part of the body, but shares some of its history. You know how I feel. The raw drawl drawn from the bottom of the throat, the hunger broken by what can and cannot heal in the much too dark to see. After the vase is asleep with the taste of the bit flower, its moodiness and lust, you know how I feel. Submerged in a clouded jar, altered and alert, the mind lightheaded and hot, run down and cloaked in awkwardness. You know what I sorrow when I lay on your back, beloved, and our lovemaking with your back to me is a form of departure. You know how I feel, terrestrial as a marriage, like a wing when it is no longer part of the body, slung from a horn carved of metal, slickened to shine a phrase winding coil, and the winded valves, the song which aches as it opens and aches as it shutters down. And then it's like, birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. And you go, breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. But I couldn't put that in there because I would get sued. All right. Okay, I can read this. This is like the first poem. And I'll read this one because there's a line that comes back from that last poem. Lovemaking is a form of departure. But this is the first poem in the book, Lighthead's Guide to the Galaxy. And then I'll end with maybe just like two poems, two new poems. Lighthead's Guide to the Galaxy. Ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and children of the state, I am here because I could never get the hang of time. This hour, for example, would be like all the others were it not for the rain falling through the roof. I better not be too explicit. My night is careless with itself, troublesome as a woman wearing no bra in winter. I believe everything is a metaphor for sex. Love-making mimics the act of departure. Moonlight drips from the leaves. You can spend your whole life doing no more than preparing for life and thinking, is this all there is? Thus, I am here where poets come to drink a dark, strong poison with tiny shards of ice, something to loosen my primate tongue and its syllables of debris. I know all words come from pre-existing words and divide until our pronouncements develop selves. The small dog barking at the darkness has something to say about the way we live. I'd rather have what my daddy calls scrimp. He says discreet and means the street just out of sight. Not what you see, but what you perceive. That's poetry. Not the noise, but its rhythm. An arrangement of derangements. I'll eat you to live. That's poetry. I wish I glowed like a brown-skinned pregnant woman. I wish I could weep the way my teacher did as he read us Molly Bloom's soliloquy of yes. When I kiss my wife, sometimes I taste her caution. But let's not talk about that. Maybe art's only purpose is to preserve the self. Sometimes I play a game in which my primitive craft fires upon an alien ship whose intention is the destruction of the earth. Other times I fall in love with a word like somberness or moonlight juicing naked branches. All species have a notion of emptiness, and yet the flowers don't quit opening. I'm carrying the whimper you can hear when the mouth is collapsed, the wisdom of monkeys. Ask a glass of water why it pities the rain. Ask the lunatic yard dog why it tolerates the leash. Brothers and sisters, when you spend your nights out on a limb, there's a chance you'll fall in your sleep. All right. So these are the last two. You know, I do always like, although I guess these are kind of older new poems, but I do like to make sure, you know, that they're worth something. So this poem is called the New York poem. What can I tell you about it? I was at this party with a friend, and he just completely showed out. He kind of abandoned me to go pursue women, so I fell asleep on the couch. And then, you know, like 6 o'clock in the morning, where he was unsuccessful with his pursuit of these women, I was like, let's go. And then he said, oh man, I'm sorry for being such an ass all night. I should have, you know, we should have just hung out and had a good time. Instead, I was running around. And I said, oh man, I don't remember anything. Don't worry about it. Just forget about it. And then I wrote this poem about it. And then it was in the New Yorker. And then he saw it. And he was like, man, I thought you said it was all right. I was like, it was. I didn't say I wasn't going to write a poem about it. Anyway, so I just have his initial in. But when I saw him, he gave me a Grace Jones record, which will make sense at the end of the poem. So, New York poem. In New York, from a rooftop in Chinatown, one can see the sci-fi bridges and aisles of buildings where there are more miles of shortcuts and alternative takes than there are Miles Davis alternative takes. There is a white girl who looks hijacked with feeling in her glittering jacket and her boots that look made of dinosaur skin. And R is saying to her, I love you, again and again. On a Chinatown rooftop in New York, anything can happen. Someone says abattoir is such a pretty word for slaughterhouse. Someone says mermaids are just fish ladies. I am so vain, I cannot believe anyone is threatened by me. In New York, not everyone is forgiven. Dear New York, dear girl with a barcode tattooed on the side of your face, and everyone writing poems about and inside and outside the subways. Dear people underground in New York, on the sci-fi bridges and aisles of New York, on the rooftops of Chinatown, where Miles Davis is pumping in and someone is telling me about contronyms, how cleave and cleave are the same word looking in opposite directions. I now know bolt is to lock and bolt is to run away. That's how I think of New York. Someone jonesing for Grace Jones at the party and someone jonesing for Grace. So, you know, I was trying to think of the most outrageous place to like get a tattoo, so I thought she's got a barcode tattooed on the side of her face. And then I heard that Gucci Mane, some of y'all may not know who this guy is, Gucci Mane got an ice cream cone tattooed on the side of his face. And I thought, I couldn't even imagine something that silly. It's crazy, like an ice cream cone tattooed on the side of your face. Anyway, so I should have put that in the poem. All right, so this is the last poem. The Rose Has Teeth. I've probably been trying to play the piano for like probably about 10 years now, and that's sort of all I can ever do. People think I can play the piano, but I can't. I just try to play it. So The Rose Has Teeth is just trying to play the piano. I was trying to play the 12-bar blues with 2 bars. I was trying to fill the room with a shocked and awkward color. I was trying to limber your shuffle, the muscle wired to muscle. I wanted to be a lucid hammer. I was trying to play like the first mechanic asked to repair the first automobile. Once piano, every man-made song could fit in your mouth. But I was trying to play Burial's Ghost Hardware. I was trying to play Steam and Sequins for Larry Levan without all the artificial bells and smoke. I was trying to play the sound of applause by trying to play the sound of rain. I was trying to mimic the stain on a bed, the sound of a woman's soft, contracting bellow, the answer to who I am. Before I trust the God who makes me rot, I trust you, piano. Something deathless fills your wood. Because I wanted to be invisible, I was trying to play like a woman blacker than an unpaid light bill, like a white boy lost in the snow. I wanted to be a ghost because the skull is just a few holes covered in meat. The skin has no teeth. I was trying to play the sound of a shattered window. I was trying to play what I felt singing in the mirror as a boy. I was trying to play what I overheard, the old questions, the hunger, the rattle of spines. The body that only loves what it can touch always turns to dust. What would a mother feel if her child sang, "Sometimes I feel like a motherless child too beautifully"? A hole has no teeth. A bird has no teeth. But you got teeth, piano. You make me high. You make me dance as only a sail can dance its ragged, assailable dance. You make me believe there is good in me. I was trying to play California Dreaming with Jose Feliciano's warble. I was trying to play it the way George Benson played it on the guitar his daddy made him at the end of the war. My lady, she dreams of Chicago. I was trying to play Muhammadu Bamba like a band of Africans named after a tree. A tree has no teeth. A horn has no teeth. Don't chew, piano. Don't chew. Sing to me, you fine-ass lounging harp. You fancy engine doing other people's work. I was trying to play the sound of an empty house because that's how I get by when the darkness in my body starts to bleed. I was trying to play Autumn Leaves because that's what my lady's falling dress sounds like to me. Before you, piano, I was just a rap of knuckles on the windowsill. I'm filled with the sound of my lady's breathing, and only you can bring it out of me. Thank y'all. Thanks for coming out. Oh, we can do questions. I didn't know we could do questions. I might have read something different if I ever knew there was questions. 10 minutes worth of questions. Yes, ma'am. Do I need a mic? Is there a mic? There's a microphone. They didn't tell me all of this.
I know you're teaching at Carnegie Mellon and love your book Lighthead. I'm wondering, do you ever just do workshops for people who actually have to work full time but are writing poetry now?
Yeah, I float around and I'll visit like low residencies from time to time and universities, but I don't just do I'm too unorganized to just organize a workshop.
So
usually,
just show up.
Right. So if there was a place that was organized and they said, "Will you come in here and do something?" I'm much more capable of that. Otherwise, I'd be like, "Oh, what are we doing here today?" You know, that kind of thing. So, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you for your contributions to
Thank
the
you.
canon.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you your process for combining your creative voice with craft.
Thanks. If I knew we were going to do questions, I would have read for like 5 minutes. This is much more fun than reading the poems. But combining it with craft, I was emailing a sort of random kid who asked me yesterday about wanting to be a poet. And of course, I would say, reading a lot, writing a lot, reading everything, those kinds of things help. But for me, like craft and sort of just trying to grow, trying to be open to whatever changes come from one day to the next. So I try not to repeat myself, and I just try to surprise myself, which has something to do with like waking up from one day to the next. So I try to tie those things with just kind of like self-improvement, trying to, as I change and mature.
Thank you.
Am I answering the question? I hope I answered it. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. It's personal and it's also professional, I guess, when I think about craft. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Thank you so much for reading out loud. I actually heard you the first time in Athens, Georgia. But I don't know, I got here a couple minutes late. I don't know if you read your poem about billiards.
All right.
And you talked to us a little bit that day about what inspired you behind your poetry. You talked a little bit about your dad. Do you mind talking about that today as well?
Yeah. So I did read that one. I started out with that one because you gotta how can you not have Gwendolyn Brooks in this space? But I can connect this to that last question. So I think I really have a sort of limited subject matter, and it is like, my dad and music. So for me, I try to just make the forms take on new shapes, which would be where that poem comes from. Like, okay, I know I have this thing that I'm sort of obsessed with. So what can I do to sort of get myself into a more interesting space? And form helps me do that. And so similarly with music, just kind of figure out different ways to kind of approach the music, sometimes around a story, like the one about Luther Vandross, and other times just around a sort of response, just a blanket emotional response, which would be the Antonina Johnston's as well as the Marvin Gaye poem. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm usually pushing against what I feel are my sort of normal tendencies rather than riding them, which is different than like finding voice, which is people say you got to find your voice. I think your voice is always there, so you really just want to see if you can get away from it, which you can't, but you can try. So yeah, yes.
Can you talk about your experiences over the summer about Avocado?
Uh-huh.
And do you have a favorite font?
A favorite font, Franklin Gothic, because it's simple. It almost looks like Helvetica, but it's not quite Helvetica. Cave Canem. So Cave Canem is a retreat for African American poets. It was started, I guess it was 16 years ago, because I was at the very first one, because I was just an assistant to one of the founders, Toy Darracott. So I never graduated. So they claim that I'm a Cave Canem fellow, but I'm really not, because I would just show up and make copies. But I did meet my wife there. So it's, she was one of the fellows the first year, and then the second year, actually we were in DC, and I was like, oh, we should get married. So then we got married 13 months later after meeting her. So Cave Canem is important for those sorts of reasons. And then this summer I went back for the first time as a faculty member, which I was not that interested in because I feel like now my time is going to be over because I'll graduate as a faculty member and then I'll be done. So yeah, there's lots of organizations all across the country where people come together and they're writing. That's just one of many. So anybody that's interested in writing, you can look at Cave Canem or Kundiman or Squaw Valley or low residency programs. I think it's a great time to be a writer or a poet because maybe this is connected to Facebook, but the communities are both tight and also enriching. You could just find so many different people. I think that's exciting. So, is somebody keeping time? Yeah, go ahead.
How's it going? As a poet who does a lot of public speaking
Uh-huh.
and speaking engagements, I'm curious in your writing process how much you conceptualize how the poem will resonate orally
Yeah,
versus
sure.
on paper. And do you feel yourself writing different poems that you think, oh, well, this poem will be more effective read orally or written, spoken orally versus
Sure.
read, or do you try to make all of your poems kind of hybrid?
Right. Well, at the genesis of the poem, I just sort of say the only other person in my room would be my shadow. So that's who I'm writing for. Like when I go up at night and I'm working on a poem, When I look around, I'm not writing for anybody except for me and the thing that's attached to me, the thing on the floor. And that's what I try to be faithful to. So that's where like honesty and profanity and perversity and idiosyncratic things, all those moments come in that genesis. But it's true, like, you know, when I wake up the next day and I start thinking about revision, part of that for me is trying to see it the way you guys are going to see it. So I have to kind of put myself in the audience and look back at the guy and say, am I understanding, am I following that? And so it's not that I write everything to be completely clear, because I actually am a big advocate for mystery, which people think, you know, there's a problem with mystery, except for in church. And everybody says, well, God's a mystery, and they love that. But when they walk out into the world, they have no tolerance for any other mystery. So for me, I'm a big advocate for that. So I am still negotiating a kind of complexity, but that's where it comes in. When I'm thinking about how does it sound in the air, are people following sort of the trajectory of it? And that doesn't always happen, but it's true. It's only in the sort of revision of the poem that I give you guys thought. But when I'm writing it, you know, and I revise poems a lot, you know, for long periods. I rarely write a poem in a sitting and it's done. Maybe that's happened once in thousands of poems. And I like the revision process because it is a struggle between what I sort of see the poem as and then what the poem is trying to be as a text on the page. So I do like that moment when I'm trying to figure out how is it going to fit between really me and between you guys, like how it's going to float out there. I enjoy that part of the writing process. Yeah, how we doing? Oh, we're good? Okay, yes.
You said something about trying not to repeat yourself earlier. I'm not sure this is the context in which you meant that, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. That image or that phrase of love-making, mimicking departure, or
right,
something like that kind of popped up
in both poems. Right.
Cool poets kind of have that thing that they do.
Right.
Like Gary Soto has the image or phrase, the clock ate up the hour.
Sure.
And I think Yusef Komunyaga has the idea that opera dead on arrival.
Uh-huh.
Rappers can't do that though.
Right,
they gotta stay fresh.
They do though.
So,
when they freestyle and they just have little hooks from stitched together. But yeah.
They say it in the next song.
Right.
It's whack.
Right.
So in relation to coolness and whackness, talk a little bit about the impetus to go back to, you know, the image or phrase, you know,
right,
that kind of keep twirling around.
Right. Well, I do think that everybody, not just writers, but all of us only have a kind of like I would call it like a bank of imagery. You could think of it as like, you know, a little vault. And there's not that many things in there. It probably has to do with how you grew up or some experiences you had. And so for writers, that becomes very clear. So for like William Faulkner, it's like wisteria, you know, it's that kind of thing. Yusuf likes flowers. So if you started running through writers, you would find it. You know, sometimes it's broad, like the body always shows up. For me, it's like blood, bodies, and sneakers. Sneakers are always in my poems. So for whatever reason. But given that we all have a sort of a basic vault of images that we draw from and sort of go back to, I sort of think, again, the idea is just to kind of get around that, because again, those images sort of constitute your vision of the world or your voice in the world. So that's why I'm fine with like repeating a line, because I sort of feel like they're in very different contexts. One is in the context of like pure music, or as I hear, pure music, and the other one is in the context of these individual statements that are kind of ars poetica statements. So I do think it's fine to come back if you are looking at other ways to kind of like resist what you're given, I think. But so I'm saying two kind of like opposing ideas, which is you can't outrun your voice, but that's why it's fun to try to outrun it, as opposed to like trying to embrace it, because to me that would be less interesting to say, you know, I wake up every day with the same basic interests and I'm going to write about those basic interests, as opposed to kind of like running the other way and knowing that they're going to catch you and bite you. So, yeah. What album was it? The Island Life album? It was her sort of in profile on it. That's all I can remember what. Because I don't have a record player. So, but he gave it to me, I guess, to say who's Jonesing for Grace and who's Jonesing for. I did want some Grace Jones music before I fell asleep, and he needed a little more grace. So, but anyway, but we're still friends. We're still friends. So, all right, thanks, guys. I think that's it. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.